Sure. Thanks for inviting us here today. And can you hear me fine?
We can.
Okay, great. So, as Ricardo mentioned, I'm joining from Brooklyn, but I was living in Iowa City for a couple of years while I was getting my MFA at the Iowa Writers Workshop program. Um, and during that time, reached out to John and Calmia at Public Space One about starting a new program there called the Center for Afrofuturist Studies. Um, it sort of grew out of curatorial work that I had been doing before moving to Iowa City that was kind of nomadic. I was going around different cities in the United States and Iceland, strangely, putting on shows with artists around ideas of Black futurity and sort of imagining different uh, versions of the future together with artists. And so it was kind of a natural outgrowth of that work to create a kind of stationary artist residency program. So we started in 2016 with 7 artists, and I'll sort of just give a brief run through, and then Ricardo mentioned that we'll do a Q&A. So if any parts of this are more interesting than others, we can hone in on those, but I'll do like a brief thing and pass it over to Delissa. Um, so that first year we had 7 artists in residence. There was a range of week-long residencies, and artists would fly out. We'd put them up. They would have a studio at PS1. They would do an artist talk or open studio kind of event, and then also do a youth workshop for a group of usually low-income youth of color that were in the area. We worked with local schools on getting school groups for our artists. Um, so the week longs were the shorter ones, and then we went up to a month and a half were the longer end ones that we did later in the year. In subsequent years, we've scaled back from 7. We found that that was a bit too much for our tiny staff, and so the average has been about 4 residencies per year. Um, Recently, just because PS1 has been in a state of change. I don't know how many folks are familiar with PS1's old space in the basement of the Wesley Center, which is a community center in Iowa City. Um, so when that was a situation, the CAS program didn't have a distinct space within PS1. So if you went to PS1, you were sort of at the CAS. And just in the last year, PS1 has moved from that space into 2 side-by-side historic houses, and then also had a merger with PATB, and so acquired a third location, um, and then also got a bookmobile. So it's been a time of a lot of growth and change for PS1, which has meant the same for the CAST program. Part of what that looks like for us has been creating a new reading room for the CAST program. So now, if you would like to visit the CAST specifically, there's a distinct space within Public Space One that you can go to. That space is in the center of one of those 2 houses that I mentioned. The house that has the gallery and artist studios in it also has this room that is full of books and resources that people can read around Black futurity. One of the requests that we got most often from people who were coming to our programs was sort of around, how do I read about Afrofuturism? I'm sort of coming to these ideas for the first time. Like, what do I read? How do I kind of do research? Apologies if you can hear that car honking in the background. Um, and that was a sort of difficult question to navigate, because on the one hand, I shy away from ever giving a sort of concrete definition of Afrofuturism. The hope is that that kind of remains open, and that each of our artists in residence is able to come and kind of shine a light on a different aspect of it, but that we never kind of concretize around a particular definition. And so what the book the reading room allows us to do is to sort of offer a variety of resources, from novels to articles to kind of more theory-based books, so that people can find their own kind of pathway and lines of inquiry within the sort of larger topic of Afrofuturism. Another change that has sort of happened to us is that our team grew. So Delissa is a brand new member of our team, and I'll let her kind of speak to her journey with the CAS program, as well as she's almost a doctor. She's a PhD student. And I think that her studies are also very linked to what she does with us at the CAS. But yeah, so I'll just pass it over to you, Delissa.
Yeah. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for welcoming us into this virtual space. As mentioned before, my name is Delissa Edinburgh, and at the Center for Afrofuturist Studies, I work with the Reading Room, and more specifically, I'm the Education Program Coordinator. My my role in the CAS occurred because of an internship, a graduate internship last year with the Obermann Center. So with their Humanities for the Public Good initiative, they connect graduate students with community organizations. And I luckily got paired with the Center for Afrofuturist Studies. So after spending 2 months there as an intern, fulfilling different roles, primarily centered around education, I transitioned to my role, which I am in now. Um, so just to add more of a background of why I'm with the Center for Afrofuturist Studies and how it links to my research um, as a doctoral candidate. So right now I look at Black women who traveled abroad for their education rationales. And I was drawn to the Center for Afrofuturist Studies in part because with my own research, I saw a number of women having to go abroad to fulfill their education aims and aspirations because of the landscape and climate of America at the time, which is during the 1920s and 1950s. Within this group, there was a lot of artists as well who traveled abroad to Paris or London to get the inclusion or recognition they needed to advance their careers. So I was particularly drawn to the Center for Afrofuturist Studies because within Iowa City, you have this space for Black artists and where they can go and fulfill their artistic ambition, where they have the support, financial support, where they have the means of reinventing or inventing or thinking through what they would want to do. And so I, just to say again, I was drawn to this space that offered support for Black artists, unconditional and financial support for Black artists in Iowa City. And so as the coordinator for the reading room, like Anne mentioned, we have a space, and within that space, there is books about Afrofuturism. Um, we also invite artists to curate book exhibitions based on their areas of interest. So that's also within the reading room, some of those books as well. A central part to the reading room too is supporting community education initiatives. So working with other organizations or other groups within IOCT to advance their education initiatives within the community as it relates to art. Or as it relates to social justice as well. In addition to that, the reading room, we also develop our own initiatives. So one initiative that we have is based off of the writing submissions that we're doing right now at the CAS, which is Tell Me You're Watching. So from that digital project that we have going on, we're going to produce a booklet and a book exhibition based on that. So that is just the general overview of my role in the CAS and the reading room, of which I mostly function within, as well as the wider Center for Afrofuturist Studies. And I'll leave it open for questions to elaborate on some points I might have brushed over or points of interest for everyone.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question for An, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks. And love the concept and love what you're doing. A lot of work that I do is in kind of a design and innovation space where we do look at futures. And so I'm really curious too, and you were like to not have that so prescribed is one of the things I was keen in on. Can you tell me a little bit more about your philosophy behind that, or where you see people getting stuck when they look at a particular prescribed future?
Sure, yeah. I can say that though I don't have a set kind of definition, there is a like a theoretical background in this for me, which is the artist Martine Sims has wrote what's called the Mundane Afrofuturist Manifesto, and it's a sort of I think loving distancing of Afrofuturism from necessarily a science fiction framework. And part of what that does is just allows us to emphasize some of the more mundane aspects of trying to think about a future. And so um, even if we have sort of science fiction resources in our midst, my goal is always to bring us to think about the kind of immediate future, next year. What does it look like to be in a future next year? And if as we all make plans for a year out, there's a way that we hope for something, but we have to be sort of flexible. And it's a lot like we're more familiar with that process than we are with planning, 20 years out or for a future that we won't actually live in.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that, and what you're doing sounds fascinating. So thank you for sharing.
I appreciate that question. Yeah. How does it play out in your, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask things back, but how does the trying to come up with futures play out in your work?
So a lot of what we do, sometimes in the design space, you might hear terms like design fiction or speculative design, and so we look at different ways at different scales that we might prototype
Mm,
considerations. Um, the whole idea and the scale and scope can change, but the idea is how do we better understand what implications might be of certain technologies, certain policies, certain shifts and changes, right? As all these different things act on the ecosystem, right? It's a big, adaptive, messy system. But what do we want to focus on, and how might we test that? And some of that we try to look at, what might be what's probable, what's possible, what's preferred, and those bring in bigger questions too of actors in the ecosystem and agency, like preferred by whom, for whom, right? But trying to take a really human-centered design to how can we test some of these ideas before we make really big decisions
mhm.
on what the future might be, and then also trying to address this weird time scale. So I appreciate you not wanting to be more than a year out, because when I was a kid, we were supposed to have clean light rail connecting the entire
Everything,
country.
yeah.
Yeah, kind of like the book We Were Promised Jetpacks, right? There are
Mhm.
some idea where we were supposed to have these things, and those move really slowly. But then, something like smartphone adoption was almost
Right.
immediate when it happened. So it's hard to look at some of those components, but a lot of it is really testing and trying to prototype, basically prototype at scale. So that could go all the way up to like almost museum installation. So when you're also talking about working with Public Space One and some of those elements, those are just and what is it that we want to test about the
Yeah.
future,
Yeah.
and sometimes even just forcing those conversations gets people. It can be difficult, can be hard, but it's interesting because even when people talk about the future, we all have mental models, but we're usually not working on the same shared mental
Yeah.
model. So how do we use artifacts to help cultivate that conversation, just to get that conversation going about what the future might be?
I love that. Yeah, you're sort of drawing out where our models might be different with a shared object of focus. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like from science and art, kind of the idea of parallax, right? From
Yeah.
different perspectives, we might be
Uh-huh.
able to get a more accurate reading of what this thing
Uh-huh.
is, but nobody owns the
Uh-huh.
definition of or kind of specs of what this future
Uh-huh.
is.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks. This is great, and I'd love to follow up with you later.
Please do.
Kind of a selfish plug for. I also host a podcast called the Iowa Idea,
Uh-huh.
and it's based on the original Iowa Idea. One of the things it brought forth was the workshop, but looking at talking to creatives and craftspeople about their journey, and would love to follow up with you on
Yeah,
that.
please do. I'll put my email in the chat.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
As you jump into the chat, I'd love to, if it's online, a link to that manifesto that you mentioned would be
Oh,
interesting.
sure. Yeah, here I'll try to give it a search. I think I can find it pretty fast.
I have a question, if that's okay. While we're paused here. Hi, I'm Katie. I kept hearing the word books when you were talking about your space, and that's what I do. I have a bookshop, coffee shop in Iowa City. It's in University Heights, technically, and we primarily focus on children's to young adult, but we also have an adult section. And I'm just curious, like, how I can help. I mean, maybe it's a book drive, maybe it's carrying the titles in the shop for others to have access to. I'm just curious how the community can help.
I really appreciate that. I think we're always hoping for more books, but I wonder, Delissa, if you want to jump in on this while I look for the Mundane Afrofuturist Manifesto.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, just to echo what Anne said, more books in a reading room is always helpful. And just, I think at this point, within the reading room or from the digital exhibition that we have, a lot of the books are adult or teen centered. And so just thinking ahead to how we can get books for younger audiences, I think that is important and something that we can think through as we progress in making the reading room more accessible to various age groups. So yes, but I think just having a wider conversation on the themes of the books that we would select and just the age group surrounding it, I think that would be important. But thank you.
Yeah, I would love to see your list too. I would love to see what titles you carry, and I love to support authors. And so, if you don't mind sending that to me, I can put my email in the chat too.
Yeah, and so on the website we have a digital library in some ways that shows the book selections that we are currently are in the reading room, and so that can give you an idea of just where we are. So I'll put that in the link as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually just put the link in the chat to
okay.
We're hoping to kind of what we can legally digitize to digitize, or at least to have PDFs of things available online. So that's something I would love to think through with you as well, as how to make books that are in a particular space available to a community that isn't necessarily in that same space. As someone who lives in New York, and I can attest to the fact that there's a lot of folks around here who know about the CAST program, and I don't know if they'll ever go out to Iowa, but they're eager to get involved. And so it's something that I think about a lot. It's like, how do we pull people who aren't in Iowa into the program?
In that same realm of books, Katie, I love that idea of maybe bringing some books, buying those up and putting them into your library. Sharing some of that author support in that way. That's sweet. I am curious, in that same light though of supporting authors, are there resources that you're connecting authors to as they pursue their kind of efforts to write books?
Is that for Cass? That's a great question. I don't think that we've had writers in residence. Justin Allen is a example that comes to mind immediately of someone who does performance and writing, and so we were kind of supporting him as he was in residence. But I don't think we've worked with writers who are in progress or in process on something. the pandemic has sort of forced us to expand the way that we work with artists. And so I'm going to be thinking about that one, um, how we might be kind of more in an advisor role or a helping role with someone who maybe never is coming to Iowa, but just uh, could be benefited by that kind of support.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about the grants that you've been able to get, what that process was like, and how that's helping us grow?
Sure, yeah. So that first year when we had 7 artists in residence, we got a grant from the Iowa Arts Council and crowdfunding that allowed us to do that. But a lot of that funding was very last minute. It came in, there was one grant that came in, I think, a month before we had confirmed someone to come out. And so we were very glad that that worked. Um, but I think it was last year, we got a grant from the VIA Art Fund, um, which is based in Boston, and it was a 2-year grant that was $20,000 per year, which sort of just allowed us to um, get some headway on our funding, so that now we're fully programmed through mid next year and looking at funding that would allow us to kind of continue after the end of the term of that VIA Art Fund grant. Um, so it's nice to be planning a little. So going back to planning, a year or two out, it's nice to kind of have that room to think about growth and not be so kind of paycheck to paycheck as an organization. Um, yeah, money is something that I think about a lot, unfortunately, and I'm sure that other folks in this group can empathize with that. Um, Delissa mentioned a project that we're working on, Let 'em Know We Watchin', which is sort of an attempt for us at moving beyond grant funding a little bit. So grant funding, I think, will always be our meat and potatoes as a nonprofit, an arts nonprofit, but we are interested in like what membership looks like for the CAST program. PS1 already has a membership program, and so we're looking at kind of folding the CAST into that, but also at donors and kind of corporate sponsors and things like this, and just very almost coyly going about it, because we're uh, having a lot of conversations around like the ethics of approaching a corporate sponsor um, as an arts organization that supports specifically artists of color, and wanting to be very careful about which sorts of corporations we kind of align ourselves with to that end. Um, I don't know if anyone has. I would actually be really curious to talk about other folks' funding structures for if anyone wants to kind of volunteer that. But we've been talking about the difference between having a few donors with very deep pockets, for lack of a better phrase, versus like a lot of support that's spread out, and the kind of, John calls this like the Bernie Sanders model, but like $2 from a lot of different people. And we're sort of built right now a little bit more for that other model. Um, but we're in an interesting growth moment. So yeah, I just welcome any thoughts or feedback on that. Yeah.
Just just
No,
to
go
add
ahead.
to Anne, I think moving away from the getting grant structure and really thinking about getting donations, it has put us in a new space of reflection, thinking about who we're getting the funding from, what's their mission, how do we broach the questions of financial support. Those are being questions that we've been going back and forth. And how do we, at the same time, stay true to the mission of the cast? I mean, social justice, racial equity, Black artists, that's the central, and Afrofuturism, but that forms the foundation of the cast. And so not having donor or donorship money in some ways, function in opposition or have a struggle against that, but allow it to function along with that. And so, um, yeah, we're in a space of reflection about that, and we're thinking through what it means. So, um, discussion here would be helpful too.
I would definitely say that I go to my aunt. I'm just going to use this as an example, and she is a hairstylist, and she can have a client, and she made this analogy years ago. I can't remember why we even had the conversation, but made the analogy years ago that I can have someone come in for a cut and color, and they're going to come back once every few months. But my neighbor down the street that comes in once a week to have her hair washed, she's not spending as much, but she's coming in every week. So you really don't want to turn down funding sources from anywhere that you can find it. It's great to have, and obviously you want it to come from a place that you're willing to accept it. You don't want to get into any sort of grant situation where it's kind of an unhealthy marriage and things of that sort. But definitely, you can't be afraid to ask for money, especially with the great stuff that you guys have going on. I think that you'll find a lot of community support for it, and there's a lot of grants available right now. The Englert Theater just put out an email about some arts funding. I can't say specifically what it was. I can try and find the email, but it's through the organization that Andre Perry was just appointed. I think he's on the board or board of directors for them. So I don't know if that's something you guys have heard about already.
I haven't. Do you know if that organization is in Iowa City? I mean, not the Englert I know, but
Yes, no, I think that it's a national organization.
okay, interesting. Yeah, I should call him.
You should.
Thanks for that.
Very cool. Any other questions?
Sorry, no, I just wanted to kind of follow up on Aaron's, just another perspective too, Aaron, on because I've been through some startups at different stages and so different contexts, but yeah, just be wary of funders that are coming in that also want to control. So like if they believe in your idea now, what I think. A couple things too. Aaron said, "Don't be afraid to ask," and I would say, be specific on your ask, or be specific on your boundaries, so that people that have money don't come in and think they're buying permission to do everything. Right? They're buying into the belief of what you're doing, and so I think just for me, my advice. And it's unsolicited, so you don't have to take
totally
it.
Solicited.
But just make sure to have your boundaries set on what you're willing to do or not do for those funds, because a lot of times I've just seen investors come in that really don't know what they're doing, but they like having the power of the kind of the check that they're providing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one shift that's been hard for us to manage as a team is going into partnership meetings with a specific ask. We tend to kind of just approach an entity that we like and see what happens. And that sort of see what happens approach isn't a great way to get money immediately. It might lead to money down the line, but it's not people don't just go, oh, I'm gonna give you money, like if you don't ask for it. So that's a kind of like the difference in approach there, something that is like not hard for us like logistically. It's just like almost like psychologically difficult to like kind of change that way of approaching. Yeah.
You have your contact information in the chat there, so you can follow up with them.
Yeah, I'll paste it again.
Yeah,
here.
well, if it's in there, that's fine. I'd also offer some assistance on crafting that pitch or that approach or the wording,
really
so that you can have it bent towards the ask versus geared towards here's what we're doing, how can you help?
Right.
There's a slight difference there that makes a huge difference.
Right.
So.
Right. Thank you for that. What's the best way to keep in touch with folks after this meeting? it would be great. Like Kate, I would love to talk to you more. Matt, I would love to talk to you. Well, yeah, I think Matt, you sent me your email, but is your name? Tell me your name.
Jade,
Jade.
Jade. Yeah.
Yeah, if we, I would love to keep in touch with you, and so.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat here real quick.
Okay, great.
Real quick, does anyone utilize LinkedIn? Because that's like one of my best friends nowadays.
Yeah,
for sure.
But,
I am on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Definitely would like to give you a follow.
Okay, please. Yeah, either send me your LinkedIn link or just find me on LinkedIn.
I will actually just.
All right, let's put a storm on the chat. Everyone's going to connect on LinkedIn. everyone multitask, grab that link, and let's connect.
Okay, here we go.
I've been doing this as the talk's been going on already.
Oh, good.
Jade, I look forward to speaking with you.
Who said that? I didn't see.
That's me, Steve Baker.
Oh, yeah, Steve. Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah, please keep in touch. I would love to do like events post COVID and stuff together and collaborate. I think it would be amazing. I'm really interested in that. We're event heavy at the shop when we're open. We have a great space with the stage and hexagon cubbies and all kinds of weird stuff going on over there that I love to use for events. So please keep in touch. Hopefully we're almost there, right?
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. I don't know if there's time for it, but I would love to hear more about what folks do in the group who haven't shared that already.
Yeah, if anyone would like to go ahead, we've got a few minutes.
I can start off. So, Dottie here, Dottie Mansouri. I am a graduating senior here at the University of Iowa. I'm also a member of the University of Iowa Founders Club, and I've been a part of the organization for over the last 3 years, and being consistent with trying to develop a mobile platform for athletes to safely connect. Be working on that, for a while. Just recently found, not recently, about 6 months ago, I found myself an individual through LinkedIn after months of investments in trying to find someone to create my prototype. So I found someone to help me create a prototype, and also through that process, I was looking for individuals to help me with trying to create my MVP, and just recently found 2 individuals through a friend list that are on the team right now, working on creating an MVP of my apps that I can hopefully launch in the next couple of months to the community and test my concept. So It's been a wild ride, but I am excited. Look forward to what the future has in store for this idea and me.
I appreciate that. Yeah, testing, I think, is a concept that belongs a lot more to the design world than the arts world, but it feels useful for a lot of different reasons. Yeah.
Nice. Anyone else like to share?
Well, thanks,
Anyone?
y'all.
No one? We have such a big group today. I thought we'd have a more talkative group here.
I can share if my camera isn't working. That's why I'm incognito here. But I'm Diane DeBach, and I work for the Iowa Nonprofit Resource Center. It's part of the University of Iowa. And I'll put our website in the chat box. If you need any of our services, you can check it out and see if that would be helpful.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for being here today.
Of course.
Hi, my name is Eric. I'm actually with a startup for the trucking and transportation world. So
Amazing. Something
that seems very different than what you're doing. But one of the things you were talking about really resonated, especially was, talking about fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the issues that sound like you're talking about, like for our startup, is do you do like a Kickstarter, take a lot of small donors or look for that one, whale, so to speak. So there may be some lessons to learn from some many websites and resources about fundraising for startups. I wouldn't necessarily look to that if I was looking, but hearing you talk, there may be a little bit different perspectives and some other insights that you could gain there. So I'll be particularly watching you going forward to see what decisions you might make there and how it goes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's really helpful to kind of look outside the nonprofit world specifically for some insights.
Yeah, there's obviously some real practical things that you want to deal with. Hundreds or thousands of small supporters, although their support is critical. But there's a lot of management there versus perhaps one big check or several.
Right.
The one lesson I would tell you is anyone who offers money, take it.
Got it. Yeah, it's the management piece that's, it's me, Delissa, John, and Calmi, and so we think a lot about how many relationships can we afford to take on at any given moment and be responsible for in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we had that same process here ourselves, so it'd be interesting to see how you navigate that.
Yeah, thanks for
a big part of taking a lot of small donations versus big ones too is managing all those transactions and relationships moving forward. When you're talking nonprofit for business, I don't know specifically what the differences are, but I'm going to invite somebody to speak to the group that can speak directly to that process of how you attract and accept and manage donations from investors from accredited or non-accredited. If that would be helpful for the group, he is definitely one of the foremost experts in the country on that, and he can answer just about any question you can have in terms of that. I don't know what he does in the nonprofit area, but I'm sure a lot of it has some crossover. So I'm going to reach out to him and see, and then I'll work with Jay and see if we can get something like that scheduled. I think that would be big for this group.
Yeah, I would love to join that session if I can.
A couple of thoughts. Sorry, I had to step away. Online school for children, so I needed to do tech support. So apologize for that. But two thoughts, just in regards to the fundraising space or funding space. One is being very intentional about donor stewardship, and so philanthropically, people want to support organizations. Sometimes I sense a little bit of a cynical bent with wanting to control the mission of an organization. I think that's certainly the case with some donors, but a lot of donor intent just needs to be guided. And so I would say intentionality is really critical in terms of stewarding donors. That would be the first component. And then the second component, I don't know how familiar or how applicable a platform like Patreon would be. But that might be either that platform or another online platform might be a way to steward donors in mass in a way that doesn't create one-off touch points for the organization. So drive some efficiency. And there's all kinds of different content models and that maybe can make sense for the organization. So two thoughts to consider there.
No, that's really.
Go ahead.
Were you going to ask
what was that platform called? Patreon?
Patreon, Patreon. It's a platform to support creatives. Okay. And there's an infinite number of ways to curate the platform. You can do membership models. You can do exclusive content models, and they've got actually a pretty nice approach to help creatives figure out how best to plug into their platform. And of course, there's a fee for all of that, but maybe that's a model that makes sense or a platform that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. It's we, after spending a long time trying to find and steward donors, we came to Patreon and started to think about, should we pivot that way, since we already have connections to a lot of low-level donors. and so it's just very validating to kind of hear you bring up Patreon. I wonder if other folk, do you have experience with Patreon? We kind of got mixed messages about it from our development consultant. He was sort of like, it's hit or miss.
Yeah. And so just to add to that, the consultant was just pointing out that there is a small group that succeeds or gain, exponential success. And then on the lower end, there's groups that just, they're trying their best to gain that success. And so also thinking about the pros and the cons in terms of the fees and how that will impact us or how, coming into our organization. And what we have to do on our end in terms of captivating our followers, the programs, the initiatives that we will have in some ways to draw donors or funders in through Patreon. So it was a back and forth discussion. So just with Anne's comment about perspectives, if anyone has any on that too.
And I would just, I think that's right on, and I would tie it back to, and one of the reasons for the first comment, I think probably success with that platform is highly correlated to intentionality and just really understanding what you're trying to deliver to your membership or to your supporters. I think people that go into that, or organizations that go into that without a really solid concept of how they want to steward their relationships, community relationships, are probably the ones that flounder. And so, that would be my thought. No personal experience, although for a creative piece that I'm working on, a little bit of a side hustle, I've started to investigate whether that's a platform that makes sense for me.
Well, we are starting to run out of time, so I do want to ask our final traditional question here at 1MC Iowa City. What can we do as a community to help you?
Oh, wow. This sort of knowledge sharing today has been so helpful, and it would be great just to kind of continue to learn from y'all in your various areas of expertise. I'm very much like grown up and trained in the like arts nonprofit world, and so there's a lot of blind spots I have that I'm thinking about. Even this phrase, Matt, that you wrote in the chat, brand strategy, which feels related to I'm sorry, I didn't see your name, the person who is just Brad, around kind of having the intentionality and having a specific offering feels like it would be related to a kind of outreach strategy. So I just feel like there are things that I can learn from folks who are kind of outside arts nonprofit world. And so any way that we can kind of continue to be in conversation, I would just be very grateful for. I don't know if you have thoughts, Delissa.
I think, the CASA is in a space in which we're trying to learn from as much individuals as possible. We have our CAS Digital Circle, which includes art administrators, educators, just individuals from broad backgrounds. And so this is adding to our attempt of, building our knowledge of our organization, of our community, of initiatives out there that we can support as well, or that we can partner with. And so just to add to answer the question, like continuing that and using this as a platform to sort of build on that would be more than helpful.
Very cool. It looks like contact information is in the chat from earlier. So is that your email address? Is that the best way to get in touch with you on?
That's the best way to reach me. If you want to reach the whole team, you can write to CASA Public Space 1, and that gets distributed out to all of us.
Excellent. Definitely. Everyone take that down. I want to thank both you, Anna and Delissa, for your presentation today. I certainly learned a lot. I hope everyone else did too. It seems like we had a really good conversation for the hour.
Thank you so
much. I'd like to add, you can
Thank you.
visit the CAS 229 North Gilbert here in Iowa City.
Very cool.